Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. This is Marta's Magical Mystery Class. And if you've been following along in the videos, whether you're a subscriber or whether you've just been watching them on your own time, you may be as far as 30,000 words into your first novel, and this is a point of great celebration. Great celebration! Because that's basically halfway. Now, your draft may run a little longer, but certainly the way I've structured this has been all about getting you to 60,000 words. So go, 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 go. You're halfway there. It's all downhill from here, more or less. Just, keep that in mind. Continue brainstorming, continue outlining, and above all, keep reading. Keep reading books in the genre that you're working in, and as you've been writing, that your sense of what genre you're working in may be evolving. So keep looking for books in that increasingly narrow subgenre. Should you find that, say, you thought you were writing a cozy mystery and you've discovered instead you're writing a thriller, move on over. If you've discovered, for example, once you realize maybe you're writing a thriller, that you're writing a political thriller, find political thrillers to read. The process of educating yourself is ongoing, and the process of understanding yourself as a writer and understanding this thing you're doing, this first book you're writing, will definitely take you places you hadn't imagined. So, stay with it, keep going. I will be talking about an element of fiction today, and I will be making 2 book recommendations. So, today's element of fiction is point of view. In some ways, that's a pretty self-explanatory term if you didn't sleep through English class, or if you haven't had a lot of English classes. Point of view is where we hear the story from, usually who we hear the story from, although the who can get a little iffier as we talk about the different types of point of view. When we talk about point of view, there are some very specific terms that go with that also. First person point of view is when we have the narrator of the book using I, and we're seeing the whole book through a central character who says, I went to the store, I bought a loaf of bread. Now, that is one way to do point of view. That is your first person narration point of view. It is possible to write a novel that uses multiple first person narrators. It's, I would say, less common in mystery because it's harder to keep a secret. It's harder to be mysterious when you are hearing from so many other people and getting so many of their motivations all dumped into the narrative, the main flow of the story. But it can be done, and I have seen it done in some interesting ways. So bear that in mind. If you're working on your draft and you're starting to feel like, oh, it really needs to be in first person, but maybe I need multiple first person points of view. Don't be afraid to experiment with that. Draft can be as messy as it needs to be. Your other alternatives, that first person is the I voice. Second person is the you voice. You walk into a room, you see a mysterious glowing portal. I guess that's more science fiction than mystery, but you walk into a room, you see a pool of blood. Oh, sorry, I can't help the Dracula laugh today. It's just there. That second person voice obviously isn't a standard writing voice. There are experimental novels written from that point of view. The way I have seen it in recent years show up in mystery is kind of fun. It's worth a little side trip. You can do online escape rooms. If you've never looked up what an escape room is, they're puzzle rooms. You have to solve all these puzzles to get out. When you do a live escape room, you actually pay anymore. It's often $30 or $40 per person to go in for an hour, and then you and the group you're with, ostensibly, are solving these puzzles together to escape from whatever. It's been a popular thing for libraries to do the last few years, so budget conscious, you can probably look around and see if your local library or one not too far from you has put together an escape room. But the live escape rooms do this a little less. Online escape rooms do this a lot. They use that you voice to tell you more about your surroundings, whether that's in actual auditory narration or whether that's in the text you get when you are doing the escape room itself. So mystery out in the world. I promised you I would talk about mystery in non-traditional ways. Escape rooms certainly are wonderful ways to experience a mystery, which may or may not be a murder mystery specifically. Getting back to writing and the way that we use point of view in writing, first person, obviously, second person, okay, less common. Third person is the other very common way of writing, and that is when the author gives us all the characters by their names and by their pronouns, and nobody in the novel speaks as the center of the book. I'll come back to the kind of exception there in a minute. But writing in third person is a way to move from scene to scene without necessarily having to have your central character in every scene, and not necessarily having to have that first person point of view from somebody else in another scene. So third person is very flexible in that way. We divide third person kind of into two categories of third person narration. There's third person omniscient narration, where as the writer and then passing it straight on to the readers, we know everything about everybody. We know all of every character's thoughts. We know all of their motivations and their secrets, and more than they know about each other. We kind of, we get to be a little god in that fictional world. That's really an older style of third person point of view. You don't see that so much anymore. The more common third person point of view in contemporary novels is what we call limited omniscience. We're using the third person for everybody, but there are definitely some characters who are more central to the novel than others, and we stay closer to one, maybe two or three of those characters, and we get their thoughts, maybe we get their points of view narrated to us, but we don't know everybody in the book as well. So those are the different ways that we can talk about point of view in fiction. There's first person, second person, go to your local escape room, or find one online, and then third person, which is that first person is the I voice, third person is the he, she, they, using names and pronouns rather than that first person voice. Now, there are always little exceptions. Inserting things like newspaper columns or letters from other people in a first person novel can give us a little window into another character or into a more omniscient voice by way of a journalistic article. In a third person novel, one of the ways to give us a more intimate take from somebody else is to have a letter included. But in a lot of ways, we're going to get that greater intimacy through dialogue when people talk to their closer friends or family. So even in third person doesn't mean we're not going to get to know what's going on with your characters emotionally or psychologically. It just means that you'll be doing more showing than telling, whereas in first person narration, the narrator may simply be telling the reader about how they are feeling about particular things. So that is what I know, what I can readily pass along to you about point of view as an element of fiction. I'm going to move on now. I promised 2 book reviews, so they're going to have to be kind of quick because I'm pushing on time here. The first book I would like to recommend is Nev March's Murder in Old Bombay. It's a recent winner of the Minotaur Books First Novel Award. It's fantastic. It's historical, set in India in roughly 1892. I think maybe the end of 1891, maybe into 1893, but really chiefly in the year 1892. It is March's research is really phenomenal. She uses first person point of view. So we are sunk immediately into Jim, our main character's world. And she uses so much sensory detail to bring this world to life. She's doing a really wonderful job, and I believe it's intended as the first book of a series. So no spoilers, but it's I think a very well-crafted mystery, really wonderful characters, setting, world building that just really is captivating. We talked about themes last time. There are a number of strong thematic elements here also. Jim is biracial. He's half Indian, half English, and a bastard to boot. He doesn't really know who his parents are. And so thematically, we see how Jim navigates the caste system in India at the turn of the 19th into the 20th centuries. So themes of race and class are definitely present. And as I said when I talked about P. Djeli Clark's books, March is also working with thematic content, making an argument that she, again, presents for our consideration about race, class, and caste. So, yeah, just really a terrific historical read. My second recommendation is Stephen King's book on writing. It's an old favorite craft of writing book of mine. It was written in 2000, so it's an older title. But it is really wonderful. And what brought it to mind recently, as I'm doing more reading about writers with disabilities and as I'm reading more writers with disabilities, I realized on writing itself, which, as I said, is a phenomenal book on the craft of writing and one of my very favorites, was written as a disability recovery project, if you want to frame it in those terms. Stephen King's car accident, if you're familiar with this story, he was hit from the back by a car while he was out walking in the fall of 1999, and suffered multiple broken bones and other physical injuries, including severe damage to his lung and a head injury. King's recovery from that accident involved the writing of his book on writing. He didn't feel like he had the attention span to go back to novels. Instead, what he found himself doing were writing these short observations on craft of writing. He was missing it. He was writing about it. And out of it came this wonderful collection of short pieces that yet form a cohesive whole on the craft of writing. So as we talk about writers with disabilities, bear in mind that includes some pretty well-known folks as well as some lesser-known folks, but we as Americans tend to be very shy of talking about anything that might look like physical weakness, and so I think we don't talk about disabilities when we talk about ourselves, and certainly not when we talk about celebrities like Stephen King. And yet he is a writer who has suffered severe disability and has done a great deal of writing about that in the context of on writing. So something to explore if you are curious about learning more about writers with disabilities. And as I said, Nev March's Murder in Old Bombay, and keep working. You're about halfway there. Yay! That's very exciting. Congratulations to you, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.